The football gods have cleared a path for the Philadelphia Eagles to get to New Orleans this February. We'll tell you how coming up next right here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase, joined as always by my co-host, Gino Camilleri. We're brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code in all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Gino, I think the Philadelphia Eagles, if they don't make it to New Orleans for Super Bowl 59, it's because they beat themselves. It really does feel like, outside of just the 10-game win streak and how good the offense is right now, the defense, the passing game, the run game, the coaching staff, everything right now, and I'm feeling weary, maybe it's just the toxic person in me that's like, when is this going to go bad? But the football gods really have given them a very favorable path. Just, not only to the 1 seed, but through the playoffs. Like right now, they're tied at 12-2 with Detroit and Minnesota for first in the NFC. And when you look at the Lions' injuries right now, even if they or Minnesota get that top seed, I think the Eagles are clearly the superior team of that top trio.
You would have to believe that, and what my eyes have seen, and you look at the injury depth, and I first want to say one thing. It absolutely stinks that the Detroit Lions have that many injuries. It's downright insane.
Like, this is 2017 Eagles level, if not, more from a quantity perspective.
Yeah, you want to pull up the day one roster of the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles and then pull up the Super Bowl winning. Yeah, Donnell Ellerbe started the Super Bowl.
You're like, here's the world's smallest violin for Detroit. Yeah.
I do not care at all. Like, Cry Me a River, it's going to be one of the... I already know how this is going to play out, Lou. I already know how this is going to play out. It's the Saints. It's San Francisco. If Detroit and Philadelphia somehow end up in a game and the Philadelphia Eagles win that game in the playoffs, oh, well, we didn't have our full team. Well, we would have beat you if we were fully healthy. Like, Cry Me a River. It's every other situation. The one thing the Eagles do have right now, Lou, they have depth. Mm-hmm. And they have the guys up top. They're getting healthy at the right time. We're going to talk about Bryce Huff coming back. Yep. Their offense is only going to get healthier. Dallas Goedert, yes, he's injured, but he's going to come back at the perfect time for a playoff run as well. We're still waiting to see what's going on with Landon Dickerson. Hopefully he's fully healthy. The secondary, as long as Slay stays in the game and he's not Jason Peters 2.0, you're good. That's what's going to take you far. That's what got you far in 2022, Lou. That was the depth.
And
those
that's
guys
a huge
at the bottom
advantage
of the
they
roster.
have. I took this picture the other day when I was watching the Monday night game, and it's astounding. And these are just the Lions' defensive injuries heading into this past week. Almost everyone of note is banged up. And, of course, now we heard that David Montgomery is out for the season with, a torn MCL.
Yep.
And, yeah, so, again, as Eagles fans, we saw our team win a championship with similar adversity, and they had injuries to every important position you could draw up. So, of course, we're not feeling super bad for Detroit, but it is a massive advantage that Philadelphia will not, as you said, they're extremely deep right now, and we're going to get into the role players coming up. And Detroit is paper thin. They're still going to be in it because of all the star power they still have, but they cannot afford, their room for error, their margin for error compared to Philly, it's razor thin.
And I think it lines up well for the Philadelphia Eagles as well. And this is one of those things that if you've been an Eagles fan, you know that last week is always super important. And I always go back to that 2008 run, Lou, that they almost had a chance to get to the Super Bowl, get to Arizona in the NFC Championship game and take a lead late in that game. But that doesn't happen if they don't handle business on that Sunday night game against Dallas, and you also needed two other teams earlier in the day to win. I believe it was the Raiders and the Texans both had to win. I think one of them had to upset Tampa Bay. One of them had to upset Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. But the Philadelphia Eagles, they're in that same situation where the last week of the season, you're going against the New York Giants. You know that you're going to have to handle business in that game. But you have to handle business against Washington for any of that to matter, because the last week of the season, Minnesota, Detroit, it's going to come down to that, Lou. And that, you got to be cheering for Minnesota, because the Eagles, if there is a tiebreaker, I believe they don't get it over Detroit, but they would get it over Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so there are a couple scenarios that play out where the Eagles do get the 1 seed. And again, if they don't win out and they're not 15-2, it becomes a little bit difficult for them.
You
at
have
least
to
in that trio.
You have to go 13 straight after the bye, which is tough, man.
Yeah, again, it's a tighter path, but if they win out, Gino, yeah, there's a really good chance that the playoffs go through Philadelphia in the NFC, because the Lions, if you look at the remainder of their schedule, it's the 5th hardest remaining schedule in the NFL. The Vikings have the 2nd hardest remaining schedule. So Detroit finishes off on the road in Chicago this week. Then they're in San Francisco on Monday Night Football, and then these two teams play each other Week 18. The Vikings play the Seahawks this week, then the Packers, and then, of course, Detroit. Where's
Philly,
that
final game? Is it in Detroit?
That is going to be in Detroit, January 5th. So the Eagles, of course, as you mentioned, it's a tough matchup this week with the Commanders. That could be a preview of their first-round matchup if they don't get the bye. But after that, you got Cooper Rush and, I don't know, what is it, Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock. So at least from a schedule perspective, the Eagles have the advantage of the 3 teams.
And Washington is not a team that you can overlook either, man.
Oh, of course not. They're trying to stick in the playoffs. Here come the Rams, man, right on their butt.
I mean, you still have to worry about, who knows, Atlanta's like, they're dying off, but they make the change to Penix. Who knows, Michael Penix can just do some December magic like he did at Washington last year and rattle off some games, and all those teams in the West are still chomping at your rear. This isn't a game that Washington can really afford to lose. But at the same time, the Philadelphia Eagles, and every time we've said that, Lou, that they can't afford to lose this game, and people keep calling us crazy that it's not a must-win. But every game since the bye, and if you're looking at it now, hindsight is 2020, but it has been because of those slip-ups before the bye week. That Atlanta Falcons game that you had in the palm of your hand, it was right there. It might come down to that, but luck has been on your side. The Buffalo Bills going to Detroit, handle business on that end. But those two teams, man, like, who's to say that San Francisco can't be in the playoff race for a wild card spot into Week 18, especially if the Eagles win against Washington. And you got Seattle that still has a lot to play for as well on the Minnesota side of things. And then those two teams are going to beat the crap out of each other to try and get the potential 1 seed, if not win the division. And how huge would that be if all the while you can get the bye, rest after 13 consecutive games, and then host multiple playoff games with a very healthy roster, Lou? Fingers crossed on a lot of it. There's a lot that you can't handle, but what they can control is winning these 3 games against division opponents. And this week especially, Lou, go and win the NFC East, man. Like, close it out right now and control your destiny the rest of the way.
It is funny, though.
Go ahead.
You mentioned the Eagles, they're still like, room for error is slim. Like, they can't have a slip up after a 10-game win streak. But you're right. It's just that's the way the season has played out, where you could be 15-2 or 14-3, and you're not the 1 seed. That's just how crazy good
Look
some
at
of these
Buffalo
top
in the
teams
AFC, Lou. They might be the best team in football, and they're still 2 games behind the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's a weird year where there's a bunch of elite teams with insane records. There's been a lot of really good teams beating up on a lot of really bad teams, right? So there's just a lot of teams at the top that have 13, 14, potentially 15 wins, which is crazy, but you're 100% right. Like, they've won every game since the bye week in week 5, and they still almost, like, you can't afford a loss the rest of the way. Like, that's an insane scenario that played out to, again, no fault of their own.
But I think the bye is the ultimate gold at the end of the rainbow, right? Like, that's the pot of gold you're playing for, and that's why you can't afford to slip up, man.
Yep.
They did them dirty in terms of giving them a week 5 bye. I still think if we get to 18 games, there's got to be 2 bye weeks. But still, week 5 is so early. Lou, you're talking the first week of October.
And you can't rest your starters at any point, probably, right? Because, So here's how it does work out for the Eagles, how they get the 1 seed. So if they do, and sorry for the word soup that is this graphic for our YouTube viewers, but if the Eagles finish 15-2, they win their final 3 games against Washington, Dallas, and New York. All they need is 1 more loss from the Lions and 1 more loss from Minnesota. If the Eagles finish 14-3 with a loss to Washington or Dallas, they need both 2 losses from Detroit. And then a few different things can happen with Minnesota. Either they lose twice, they lose just the 1 game to Green Bay, or they lose another game and the Eagles' strength of victory over the Vikings does stay put. So, again, scenarios for me make my head go nuts this time of year, but that's kind of how it breaks out. no matter how it works, though, Gino, I just can't see a scenario where they're relaxing Week 18, which sucks because, like you said, they haven't had a bye week since, the beginning of October?
It does, but that's kind of been the situation the last couple years for Nick Sirianni.
And that's just the NFL now, man. Like, there's only one bye week, which I hate, but that's the reality of the league for everyone except for 2 teams.
4 years in the playoffs, Lou. When has there ever been a week 17 or 18 where they've been able to rest their guys?
No, 2021, weirdly enough, actually, because they were locked into the 7th seed, but that's all that I can remember.
It wasn't in 2022. You were playing until the end of the year to get that one.
2017, I guess. But that's a two.
But in Nick Sirianni,
league,
it's been
that's a different world.
Yeah, it's a completely different world. There's only one bye week. It sucks because you're a really good football team and the NFC is so hard. But what a statement that would be for the Philadelphia Eagles in the year 2024 to know how good these teams were this year and you just were better than them. And you can cement that the next 3 weeks because I keep harping on that depth, Lou. They are healthy. They got to stay healthy. There's been some guys that have been banged up. We still have to figure out Landon Dickerson. Hopefully he's good. But right now, this is so unlike last year, where they did not have the guys. They just could not run. They did not have the energy to finish out that marathon. They were at the 20th mile of the marathon, and they are sucking wind. Here, they just passed the finish line of the marathon. They're like, let's go again. This team seems ready to go. They don't seem like they're waiting to get energetic for games. The defense is ripping
they're young,
off
Gino.
the
This
go.
isn't last year's
exactly. It's
dinosaur
not
roster.
an old team. Exactly.
No, they can still go. They're fresh because they're a young team, and because something you alluded to earlier in the segment, they're deep. They're a lot deeper from a roster perspective on both sides of the ball than Minnesota and Detroit. And that's a key storyline I want to get into as we continue this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5 and you'll get $150 back in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, they give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Gino and I, we take our player props every Friday with LOE3. We've had a lot of success this year, so tune in Friday. Take that bet with $5. You'll get $150 back in bonus bets. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We are talking NFL playoffs here, but it is also that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting at the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup. The Southern Methodist University Mustangs out of the ACC battling the We Are Penn State Nittany Lions at noon out of the Big Ten. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch all the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. We're talking one seed on today's show, how the Eagles get over the hump, get that bye week over both the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. All three teams are tied at the top right now at 12-2. The Lions, though, do have the three-way tiebreaker, so they right now have the one seed. The Eagles still in that second spot. But regardless of how the seeding goes, Gino, I think, again, the football gods have made it very favorable for the Eagles because of the injuries of Detroit. I know I've been saying it all year and they keep winning games. I still don't believe Minnesota's a legitimate championship contender. I think they're a very good football team, but they give me kind of 2017 Vikings vibes.
How weird is that it feels like the same exact team?
It feels like the exact same team. Darnold, to his credit, I think is better than what Case Keenum was. Kevin O'Connell is one of the best quarterback minds in the league.
Oh, without a doubt.
They've got
He's
legit
done a fantastic
weapons.
job.
Yeah.
Flores has done a great job on defense, too.
Is the kind of coordinator I think could give Jalen Hurts some problems with all his disguised pressure looks, so that would be an interesting matchup. But yeah, I still don't really I'm not scared of Minnesota. You know what I mean? Like, I'd still be more frightened to play Green Bay.
If you're scared with this Eagles team, Lou,
yeah, you shouldn't be scared of anybody. But
you shouldn't be.
I should say more just what are the ideal matchups. For the Eagles, though, they're just so deep right now that I don't know if anybody can hang with them. Like you said, they haven't had a bye week since week 5, but they look so fresh, and it's because, unlike last year, this team is not top-heavy. They're not being carried by their stars. Sure, they have stars at almost every position. Their coaches are crushing it as well, their front office. Like, this is a full team effort. But that second layer of the roster, Gino, there's so many guys that are quietly having career years that are a big part of the success that you're just not hearing a lot of because of, for Nakobe Dean, for instance, Zach Baun's the best linebacker in football right now, so you're not hearing of him, even though he's the second highest graded linebacker since the bye week. He actually leads the league right now in run stops. He was the highest graded player against Pittsburgh. You see like Milton Williams, Amoro Ijoma, even I would say Darius Slay is kind of in this conversation because of Q and DeJean. That second layer of the roster, they're balling so much too that your counterpunch, like, does Detroit have those guys to hang with the second group the Eagles have, kind of like in NBA terms, their bench mob? I don't think they do.
Not on defense. I don't
Definitely
think
not
they
on
do.
defense. They do on offense, I would say. But
Minnesota, I think, is deeper than people know. I think they're built like very similar to Philadelphia, but I don't think they have they don't have that Jalen Carter.
They don't have the name value on defense. I think a lot
they
of
got
people would know
Jonathan
who they
Grenard
have.
coming off the
Grenard's
edge.
a good player. I liked him in free agency this year.
You got some guys that can get to the football, and Josh Metellus is kind of like a chess piece on the other side, and he can really get around and make a lot of turnovers. But I still trust what the Eagles have because I've seen Fangio and his rotational ideologies really come to fruition down the stretch, especially because of one thing. You talked about the youth, Lou. The conditioning. The Eagles' strength and conditioning program this past offseason, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. Look at those two guys and see the buy-in from them. Jalen Carter doesn't come off the field. Jordan Davis is in the best shape of his life. Those guys are running around like their hair is on fire.
Whereas last year, they couldn't even walk to the sidelines, it felt like, the second half of the year because they were so tired.
I mean, they were gassed, all of them. They were just zombies for a while in that back half of the season. They were getting pushed off the ball. They weren't able to anchor. None of the linebackers were flying around. The secondary was non-existent. But you talk about being top-heavy, you can't keep the top afloat without a good foundation of these guys in the middle of the roster. We always like to talk about the 2017 Eagles team. Do you win it without Halapuli Vaitai? Do you win it without Isaac Seumalo coming into his own down the stretch? Do you win it without Corey Clement? No, you do not. And a lot of it has to go with the development as well. These coaches have done a fantastic job, all the position coaches, and we could list them all by name, but I think every single one of them has done a downright damn good job of getting their guys ready to go. One position in particular that I'll pinpoint that I think fits what we're talking about here is defensive backs coach Christian Parker. Talk about a guy like Isaiah Rodgers, who he came here thinking he was going to start. That's what he thought.
He was starting all summer in camp. Remember, Q was in the slot. We all forget about that.
And then Quinyon Mitchell turns into the defensive rookie of the year, which
football,
he is the favorite to win that right now. Isaiah Rodgers has had to come in some huge moments and make some fantastic plays. Talk about a depth signing that they did not have last season. After the top gave out on the secondary, and go back to 2018, man, like Michael Jacquet is in the equation at times for this team. Like, does that happen anymore? No, because even in Avonte Maddox down the stretch.
Bradley Roby last year playing ball.
Speaking of Bradley Roby, maybe the greatest tweet of the season. Cooper DeJean made a great play, and he says, I was warming 33 up for him last year. Great spin zone. Shout out Bradley Roby. If you ever want to talk on the show, he's definitely welcome. But the Eagles, they needed to just fill in the gaps with good ball players, Lou. It's not just bodies, right? It's not just Shaq Leonard and even like Zach Cunningham looking at the linebacker play last year. We thought he was the God's gift to earth. And
when you're rotating... When you're rotating the backups, it doesn't feel like you're going to take a step back because Milton Williams has the second highest pass rush grade of any defensive tackle right now in the league. But guess what? When number 97 comes in, Moro Ijoma, he's 14th in the league right now. So
can you tell when like the top guys are off?
No, that's
the field
thing.
Because I can't. on defense especially.
Who on this team is regressing or struggling compared to like last year? There was a bunch of guys you could say were regressing at this point of the year or were having an off year compared to past seasons. I don't know if there is, I mean, even like we were talking about Kenneth Gainwell yesterday, and these guys aren't role players, but Jordan Mailata and Devontae Smith are the second best players of their position. I mean, it's just an unreal roster right now that we're looking
What about
at.
like a Tyler Steen who's had to play,
Yeah.
dude, like way
Fred
more
Johnson.
snaps than you envisioned this season. Fred Johnson as well, and those guys come in and you didn't even know at
And now you got
times
Jalix
that you were
Hunt,
down to your
that's-
seventh guy.
Yeah, Jalix Hunt's starting to flash now too. You're going to get Bryce Huff back, which we'll talk about in a second. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, Detroit's
Tristan
so
McCollum,
good.
can't forget about him. He made some
Tristan
good plays
McCollum.
at times. Yeah.
That's the difference, I think, between, there's some other differences too. Like, I think quarterback that I would give the Eagles the advantage over Minnesota and Detroit. But when it's top heavy teams like that, there's like only a few advantages. And I think depth, like the Eagles really have that advantage. And that's crucial when it's in late January.
I think a team like Green Bay as well has a good amount
deep.
of depth, and they're young. You
I'm more
talk about
scared
that
of Green Bay
conditioning
than
element.
Minnesota. Or I should, again, fear and scared are probably the wrong words, but you know what I mean.
Matchup wise, I know
Yeah.
what you're saying, and I think if you look at this team as opposed to last year versus 2022, where does it line up? Yes, you have the stars up top, of course, but the guys that fill in the middle, the money is in the crumbs type of signings that Howie Roseman has had to make in the past that he's missed at times. He really knocked it out of the park, man. And that's not just a one-season thing, right? We're talking about guys that have been drafted a couple years ago in the development that it has taken to get them to this point. It is a culmination of everybody's efforts getting them ready to go. But it was a conceded effort to address the issue, which is another thing that they do exceptionally well. If we don't have the guys at certain positions, we're going to go out and fix it. And they did that at every single spot, Lou.
Every single spot. And I think one spot that's going to get even deeper at the end of the year is edge, because Bryce Huff looks like he could be coming back sooner than later. We'll get into that as we wrap up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
This episode of LOE is also brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000, yes, 1 with 3 zeros behind it, times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your pick hits, Prize Picks make it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as easy and fast as 15 minutes. This week, I'm looking at Jared Goff for more than 230 passing yards and Saquon for more than 1 touchdown. I mean, come on, that's easy money. It's quick, simple, and so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game.
This Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles is also sponsored by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me a lot over the years. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't realize I was paying for. There's actually a lot of that going on. Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in just one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit that year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. You can then use that money on an Eagles playoff ticket. It's going to be that price. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel all the services that I didn't know that I had. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, so we were talking role players and how that could be a huge difference between the Eagles, the Vikings, the Lions in this race for the NFC crown to get to New Orleans in February, Gino. And I think a player that's coming back that's crucial in that rotation, maybe doesn't get enough credit, is Bryce Huff. The Eagles activated his 21-day practice window today. Nick Sirianni at his press conference right before the show was a little quiet on Huff, said wasn't sure when he's going to play, kind of just opened the window to see, is he ready to go against Washington? I would probably say he's back against Dallas. That would be my prediction. But this is important, man. Like, I think obviously Nolan Smith's coming off a career game. Josh Huff's killing it right now. He's got 8 sacks. Should have 9 if it wasn't for an Avonte Maddox penalty.
You just said Josh Huff.
I did. My bad. Oh, God. Thank Chip Kelly for that one. I combined Josh Sweat and Bryce Huff, which weirdly enough was an Eagle player. Josh Sweat, and then Jalix Hunt's looked good. But, I do think it's important to get this rotation back to 4 guys. And now that Smith is playing so well in every way, and so is Sweat. Jalix Hunt's been good against the run. I feel like you were already doing this after the bye, but now you can go all in on saying, Bryce Huff, just put your hand in the dirt, go get the quarterback. We're not going to make you do anything else. I really think that needs to be the blueprint when he comes back.
I'm glad that they finally fixed his hand issue. Like, it was clearly a problem. He was getting limited snaps. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, they don't trust him." Like, he look at his hand, dude. It literally
for
looked
3 weeks. The guy's got a club on, and
somebody just took duct tape and wrapped it around as many
Yeah.
times as possible to make a baseball bat. But
Right.
he is a great and welcome addition at this point in the season, Lou. And I think the best thing for Bryce is coming back with 3 games potentially left, and we'll see if he gets healthy for this Washington game. But hypothetically, whenever he does, the way to get him comfortable, 3rd down pass rush. Put your hand in the dirt. That's all we're going to ask you to do at first. We know that Nolan Smith up top and Jalix Hunt can get it done as that front side edge rusher if we need be. And once you get your play strength back, once you get your conditioning back, then we'll cycle him into the rotation. But you get him involved early and often the way that you did before that injury. 4-point stance, let him get off the line, let him be that speed ball. I think you even bring him back in some situations in some quick NASCAR packages where you have multiple edge rushers on the field and let him rush from multiple angles. Just let him get his confidence back because he was really starting to come into his own in the Fangio scheme before he got that injury. And even when he was hurt, Lou, there were some times when he was creating pressure just because he was so fast and he was so difficult to deal with for some smaller offensive linemen.
His last game, he had 10 pass rush snaps, and he had a strip sack and 4 pressures. So again, is he going to be the player they thought they were getting when they paid him? Probably not right off the bat for these final 3 games. But Gino, to add a pass rush specialist like this that has his track record right before the postseason, that's a really big add. It's kind of like having a trade deadline move right before the season ends.
Yeah, it's like adding a bullpen reliever when you need one going into the postseason for baseball. And he is a guy who he should get his play speed underneath him these next couple of weeks, and then just in time for the playoffs, he should be full speed, roaring, ready to go. You're going to have a 4-deep rotation at that point. You know Brandon Graham is out for the season, but then you add the guys on the inside that can rush from just about anywhere. I think we should start seeing Jalen Carter get some opportunities to rush outside as well. I think that would be a nice way to change up the game plan at times too. Fangio's going to have so much fun now as he gets to trust these guys, which he has. I mean, you're seeing Thomas Booker still get snaps late in this season. One of the things we were worried about with Fangio is he likes to let everybody play early and then whittle his rotation down. His rotation is just getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Well, like we were saying, nobody has lost his trust, right? I mean,
not to this point, and I don't see that happening anytime soon because these guys are only getting smarter, more confident, quicker, more instinctual in this scheme. And Bryce Huff is another guy who, right in time for the playoffs, he's going to come back healthy. You're going to get him. You're going to get a Dallas Goedert back and ready to go. How great is that to add those 2 guys at this point in the season, Lou?
It's 2 crucial roles for the playoffs. Again, to have, even if Bryce Huff is just the guy you were getting after the bye week, a pass rush specialist, that's so massive for the postseason. Again, this is a player that's still only a year removed from being someone that had the 6th highest pass rush win rate of any edge in a decade and the 3rd best pressure rate in a decade. That's how good Bryce Huff has been over the last few years, and he was slowly getting back to that player in that way. And that's, again, so important in the playoffs, is to have a guy that can consistently get to the quarterback. You have the well-rounded player of a Nolan Smith and a Jalix Hunt, and Josh Sweat is your best overall pass rusher right now. But to get that fastball as that fourth man when you don't have a fourth guy right now, like that's big. So I would take their time with it, like see how he's looking this week, but definitely get him back for that Dallas Giants game, get him warmed up, and then it's full go in the postseason.
You need somebody to be your closer this year. You don't have Hassan Riddick for the first time in a long time. Maybe it's Bryce.
It's just nice to have another option to be the closer, right? I mean,
Exactly.
Smith and Sweat have been those guys, but you don't have, like you said, the Riddick, like the guy know is going to be that. So it'd be nice to just have another option of someone can do it.
Exactly, and I don't see Vic Fangio not trusting him unless he does some things that are just extremely bad when he comes back and he looks sloppy. Another welcome addition, another depth piece that this team needs, another role player who can get you 2 or 3 sacks down the road here, Lou, and that would be huge for him in these final games.
Absolutely. So the Eagles, they're getting deeper when the Lions, they're getting thinner right now as the 1 seed race continues. Big matchup coming up this week, though, to clinch the NFC East with the Washington Commanders. Myself and David Harrison will preview that matchup tomorrow on Crossover Thursday. Gino and I, we got LOE 3 coming your way on Friday as well. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off for now. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.